All right, Jay. Loving the new facial hair. So with that, we're gonna let you speak.
Okay, yeah. Does anybody else have any other stories to say? Because I wrote a five-page paper on Saturday, and I want to be sure not to take up a ton of time with my five-page paper that I'm about to read. So, does anyone else have anything to like share before I do? I just want to make sure.
Very relatable.
Okay, cool. I guess not. All right. Like I said, I wrote this like it was like 1 o'clock in the morning Saturday. I've spent a lot of my recent time reflecting just on my past and the lessons I've learned as they relate to my future because I'm kind of getting ready to jump into the next like phase of my life. And I've just been, like I said, kind of trying to relate or reflect on the things I've learned up to this point. So these are super raw thoughts that I just, like I said, kind of went on because they've been bottled up in my body for about 10 years. So some of these things are super raw and super emotional, and I'm shaking like already talking about it, but I'm gonna try to get it out. So,
Sure.
um, I started with meeting my black family last year was an interesting time to say the least. This whole journey of being kind of like ethnically ambiguous has been super interesting. Exhausting is another word that I could use. When I was 10, I looked around at my 10th family Christmas, count them 10, because that was the 10th that I had. It wasn't like my first time around. It was my 10th one. It was just the first one that I guess I used my eyes. I looked around for the first time and realized that like I wasn't like everyone else in the room, and that my skin color wasn't similar to everyone else's in the room, and that I was the only black person there, and I would kind of continue to be the only black person there for the rest of my life. And sorry for being so shaky. I'm not a shaky guy typically when speaking, but these things are hard for me to talk about. So,
Don't apologize. Don't apologize. It's okay.
and so it began, like I said, the lifelong journey of kind of being not white, because at that point I wasn't quite black. I was just not like everyone else around me. And so I was really confused. My mom was white. My dad was white, or at least the guy who I thought was my dad because we kind of shared the same name. And my grandparents were white, like my parents' parents. So, looking around at 10 years old, it's kind of like, what am I? And that was a question that wouldn't really be answered until recently, really until like I became a part of the Cook family and around like that time. But I won't skip any thoughts. My parents told me something around like the key of, we don't know what you are, but we know you're not black, and we know, we had the nurses check to make sure, just, for like medical reasons, and I honestly like trust my parents on that. But they basically said you're not black. We don't really know what else you are. So again, like 10, 11 years old, my whole world was like tumbling down. I was like an athlete who was doing all these things. I felt like, I had a lot of like my life set up, and my identity was just like gone. It was just like taken from me, stripped from me at like 10, 11 years old. So my mom wasn't telling me the truth, and me and my mom, like even up to the times that I'll get to, she was my best friend. So to have my best friend like not telling me the truth really hurt my feelings, and not know my real dad, or like to not feel like the person who was like my real dad actually being my real dad hurt my feelings too. So never really cared too much though, like growing up, about not knowing my like real dad though, because I didn't really have a reason to. Truthfully, my parents like gave me a lot of what I needed to like be successful, and that's kind of why I get to sit here and speak to you guys today, shakily still. But as I kind of like grew up, like I said, I didn't really like see that other side of like being black or like worrying about the things that I didn't have. So year 12 of my life came, and that was a couple years after I found out that I didn't really know my dad or who I was or what I was trying to do. And my mom passed away. And that was like the hardest thing I've ever been through my entire life. And so for me, that was like, I lost my best friend, and I also lost like the only hope of ever finding what I hoped to be my like second best friend. And this passing made my grandparents, and I'm like starting to cry, so I know you guys say, well, don't apologize, but this is really hard for me. The passing made my grandparents feel really guilty about like the lack of information that I got. So like they after a lot of deliberation, which really to me, sorry guys, this is the first time I've like said a lot of this stuff out loud.
You're doing great, Jay. Take your time.
I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
Um, After a lot of deliberation, which was really just my parents trying to talk me out of finding out who I was, we got an ancestry test, and I'll never forget the day after months of waiting. It was months of waiting, finding out that I was black. And I'll also never forget my parents, my white parents, trying to talk me out of that, and kind of trying to tell me that maybe that test wasn't accurate, or maybe I was still Puerto Rican because, up to this point, and you guys look at me and like even I get jokes, and I take them because I had a really good friend growing up playing baseball. He was Puerto Rican and we looked like brothers. Like we could have passed off, even to this day, we could pass off as brothers. So I got the Puerto Rican thing a lot. And like I said, like my parents kind of like giving me that take really hurt my feelings, and kind of like made this process really difficult and has really like hurt my feelings for a long time. So for me, it was like I could finally be somebody, right? But I was wrong. Things got really, really, really confusing because for me, I was already kind of like the white kid. I was the white kid in like the black areas because I had a white family who was taking care of me. But like the white kid saw me as black, and the black kid saw me as white. So it was now I was the black white kid. And it was just a really confusing situation to be in. And so before my mom died, but especially after my mom dies, my parents like always made sure they gave us everything we needed. And this meant like, giving us things physically. And really for me at the time, like reflecting on it back then, that turned us into kind of like monsters. We went from living with my mom, who again was like my best friend, and we struggled, but she tried really hard. We went from sharing a 3-bedroom trailer where I was kind of like the dad of 3 sisters, and in and out boyfriends, to a house on the water in one of the nicest communities on the coast, and being kind of like the poster child of the coast. Like I went from being the poor, dirty black kid to being one of the best outfielders in the community. So it was weird to go from both sides of the spectrum at such a young age, and to feel the differences in the way that I was treated from living in a trailer to living in a house on stilts. And so I wrote here that, we kind of forgot what made us who we were, and we became who people thought we were. And I'll skip some of the ex-girlfriend talks, but kind of after meeting someone who really changed my life and really opened my eyes to like who I wanted to be and who I should be, and not, like who everybody else wanted me to be, or who I was trying to fool myself into being. It kind of brought me into like the more recent years, where I've started to try to build like an emotional base for myself to kind of try to be able to channel these emotions into positive action rather than to just hurt, and in the past just kind of like push everybody away and hurt everybody around me, and just not be productive with my feelings. So it's been really hard, and the reason it's been really hard is because like the recent discoveries in my family and the conversations that I've had as a result of it. So if you guys don't know, last March was like around the time that I started the process of becoming a part of the Koch family. I found my biological dad, and this was a result of like when I took the test, I guess it was 6 years ago, seeing my family, because Ancestry, when you do it, it kind of tells you like the cousins that you could maybe have based on your like your DNA. So I had like a 4th or 6th cousin listed from way back when, and like I said, back then I didn't really care that much. But when I got to college, I kind of started digging, and I messaged that cousin, and he helped me find my dad. And it was a really fast, turbulent time happening in my 3rd semester of college after I had failed my first 2, and I was getting ready for finals. I was getting ready to get started in my career. I was becoming a part of the Koch family. It was a really crazy time. It was one of the craziest times of my life. And I shaved the details, and I did a crazy story on it, but one day I'll give like the full details on it, but I don't think we have enough time for that now because I'm still going. So for me, this meant, it didn't just mean that I had a dad, but it meant I had a family. It meant that I had like a black family, because I always had a family, and a family that loved me, and like I said, like at the end of the day, took great care of me. But I can never like, they never understood, like at the end of the day, they never got it. They never really understood how I felt, and they didn't feel like me because they just didn't understand, just like the things that black people go through, that are just like we kind of talked about, just like under the rug, kind of undercover, just like just comments here, looks there, just the way people turn when you walk in a room versus how they don't when somebody else walks in a room. It's just like it was really hard growing up like in the South. So it was, to me, it was like I had people who really understood who I was and where I came from. So after an introduction to the family in March, and life happening, time passing, and honestly like a lot of great stuff happening with Coke, that's really like what was taking up a lot of my time, and I'm so grateful it was. I got to meet them holiday season of 2019, and I wrote it here, and I exclaim it the same way because it's truly how I felt. And it was like, holy shit, dude. Like walking in a room full of people that looked exactly like me for the first time ever was like, this is the first time I'm talking about it out loud, but dude, that was awesome. I'll never forget that. Like, I don't know. It was something that I'll never be able to explain. I'll never be able to explain it. But just being able to hug like my grandparents and my now cousins and my aunts and my uncles, and to have people who like have the same passions as me. My cousins do YouTube, and my cousins are actors, and my uncles and aunts are doctors, and all kinds of they're just like all the people I'd ever want to be. And that it was awesome, and things were great and have been great, but because of that relationship, my white family has felt kind of disrespected, and it's been tearing me up inside recently. It's been super hard, and it really started coming to a head when George Floyd passed away, because that's when all the really hard conversations like restarted, because they've always been hard. My parents and I have always butted heads about race because they just don't understand, and I've always understood that they just don't come from a place to be understanding of like the feelings that I have. But this time's different for me because and you guys know, like I was super loud to Coke, I was super loud in gaming, and I just felt like I couldn't be loud in all of those places and not hold my family to the same standard. So I just didn't know what to do with myself. So after realizing that I wasn't really talking about it and I wasn't really like doing anything about it, I realized I had to make a decision about, how I was going to like operate with my family and how I was going to handle my family situation. And after kind of figuring out that they don't really want to understand these issues, I've come to understand that just because they gave me everything growing up, doesn't mean I owe them the things that you may owe your parents as you do typically because they raised you. And that sounds super bad when you say it the way I do, but after hearing some of the pain that you may have heard in my story, maybe you can understand where I'm coming from. But I don't say all of this to trash my parents or to talk bad about the things that they may or may not have done for me, because like I said, at the end of the day, it was 90-10, and the 10% just so happened to be a lot of emotional stuff that's unfixable. But the reason that I wrote all of this and the reason that started all of this was because all of it makes me really angry. And I'm not mad at myself, and I'm not mad at my parents. And honestly, and truthfully, like the part that hurts my feelings the most is I'm mad at my mom for not understanding that she could have changed a lot of this and maybe helped, start these conversations and change these conversations, not just within our family, but, on a bigger scale. Like if our family could have been a driver for change, then maybe we would have been a louder voice on the coast. But it makes me angry because there's a situation out of my control. And not only has this fundamental change in my operation as a human helped me build this emotional base, but friends in my black family have too. And very little development has come as a result of the relationships I've held with people who don't understand the issues and the struggles that I have in my life. So I say all of that to kind of wrap up to a point where these things every day, and even after crying a little bit, and thank you guys for dealing with me crying, all of these things kind of keep me going. And it keeps me going knowing that every day I have people like Coca-Cola and people like my black family and like my friends I love so much here for me, like working with me to create the change that I hope to see. And I'm really grateful to be surrounded by people that believe in me and believe in the things that I believe in. And I hope that my story can maybe give some legitimacy to the anger that I show sometimes when I'm trying to create the change that I am. Because I know Alaire and Miss Cassie, sometimes I come off really loud and sometimes I come off as disrespectful, but I promise it comes from a place of love. And yeah, that's all I have to say, I think. Thank you guys for listening.